Gaultier's Gambit, A Tale of Dark Deceit, by Bernhard T. Chapter 1, Part 1, Gaultier. The creeping tendrils of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a pallid light upon the remote monastery in the Loire Valley. A sanctuary hidden away from the world, this solemn refuge offered a stark contrast to the life Gaultier had once led. A life of blood and steel, a life he had exchanged for the quiet guise of a humble monk. The abbot of Saint-Germain-des-Prés had orchestrated this ruse, offering Gaultier a safe haven from the powerful enemies that pursued him. He'd crossed swords with some dangerous people during a daring rescue, and now the shadow of retribution loomed over him like a storm cloud. In the monastery, Gaultier had found solace and security, but he could never truly escape the ghosts of his past. They haunted him, whispering at the edge of his thoughts, a constant reminder of the danger that pursued him. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Gaultier made his way to the chapel for morning prayers. The scent of incense hung heavy in the air, and the murmured prayers of the monks enveloped him like a comforting cloak. In these moments, he could almost forget the life he'd left behind, lose himself in the sacred rhythms of the monastery. The simple meal that followed was a far cry from the rich feasts he'd once enjoyed, but it was enough to keep him alive and focused on his new mission. As he broke bread with two young monks, he felt their eyes on him, brimming with curiosity and questions. They'd heard the stories, whispers of Gaultier's past life as a mercenary, and they were hungry for tales of adventure and danger. As they pressed him for details, he couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for the life he'd left behind. "My sons," he said, his voice low and gravelly, "the life I once lived was filled with excitement, but it came at a high price. I fought and bled, saw friends fall and enemies rise. It was a life of violence and chaos, one that took its toll on my soul." Gaultier paused, taking a sip of water, his eyes dark and haunted. "The truth is, I'm here because I crossed paths with some dangerous people who wouldn't think twice about putting a dagger in my back. I'm playing a part, hiding in plain sight. The abbot of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, he's done me a kindness, but I'm far from safe." The young monks exchanged nervous glances, their romantic notions of Gaultier's life giving way to a sobering reality. "But here, in the quiet of the monastery," he continued, "I've found a different kind of adventure. It's one that challenges me to grow, to find a sense of purpose beyond the edge of a blade. While my reasons for being here are far from pure, I've come to appreciate the peace and wisdom this place offers." The young monks stared at him, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and trepidation. Gaultier offered them a grim smile, a silent acknowledgement of the harsh truths he'd just shared. As they left, Gaultier couldn't help but wonder how long the sanctuary of the monastery would last. The shadows of his past were never far behind, and he knew that sooner or later he'd have to face them head-on. In the murky depths of his memories, Gaultier recalled the turning point that brought him to this place of refuge. His transformation from a feared mercenary to a devoted monk had begun with an unlikely assignment, recovering a kidnapped child from the clutches of Beauchamp, a notorious villain who had once been a part of Gaultier's own past. The case gnawed at him, drawing out the ghosts of the lives he had taken and the chaos he had caused during his time as a mercenary. With a razor-sharp mind and an intimate knowledge of the criminal underworld, Gaultier had traced the child's whereabouts, eventually cornering Beauchamp in an abandoned warehouse. The showdown had been one of wits rather than weapons, and Gaultier had emerged victorious, rescuing the child and capturing the man who had haunted his past. His patron, the abbot of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, his heart heavy with prayers for the child's safe return, had been struck by Gaultier's abilities, and in that moment, a tenuous bond had been formed. For now, he would continue to play his part, seeking solace in the rhythms of monastic life. But beneath the surface, the ember of his old life still smoldered, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the monastery walls. He spent his days laboring in the fields, tending to the monastery's crops and livestock. The work was hard, and the hours were long, but it offered Gaultier a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. As he toiled under the sun, sweat dripping from his brow, He could almost forget the blood that stained his hands, the lives he'd taken in another life. Evenings were spent in quiet study, poring over ancient texts and illuminated manuscripts. The monastery's library was a treasure trove of knowledge, a place where Gaultier could lose himself for hours on end. It was here, among the dusty tomes and flickering candlelight, that he found solace from the relentless memories of his past. In these moments of respite, Gaultier began to understand the true value of the life he'd stumbled into. The peace of the monastery, the camaraderie of his fellow monks, the wisdom of the Franciscan order. These were the things that gave his life meaning, that allowed him to atone for his past sins. But the shadows of his past were never far behind, lurking in the corners of his mind, whispering insidious doubts. How long could he maintain this charade, hiding in plain sight from the enemies who sought his demise? How long before his past caught up with him, shattering the fragile peace he'd built? Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. Gaultier grew more accustomed to his new life, the rhythms of the monastery becoming as familiar to him as the beat of his own heart. Yet even as he found solace in the simple routines of his daily life, he could not escape the knowledge that his time was running out. One evening, as Gaultier sat alone in the library, he found himself reflecting on the life he'd left behind, the roar of battle, the taste of victory, the thrill of the hunt. It was a life that still called to him, a siren song that refused to be silenced. But the peace and wisdom he'd found within the monastery's walls offered a different kind of satisfaction, a sense of purpose that transcended the chaos of his former life. He knew that ultimately he would have to choose between these two worlds, to confront the ghosts of his past and embrace the future that lay before him. As the sun set and the shadows lengthened, Gaultier found himself at a crossroads. The life he'd left behind was a constant reminder of the danger that pursued him, but the sanctuary of the monastery offered a chance for redemption, for healing. And so, with a heavy heart and a steely resolve, Gaultier chose to walk the path of the monk, to embrace the peace and wisdom of the monastery and turn his back on the darkness that had defined his past. The shadows of his former life might never truly be vanquished, but he would not allow them to destroy the fragile peace he'd found within the monastery's walls. You want to know how the story develops? Subscribe now.